This is the story of an American soldier who laughed at President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. What happened next will shock you. This is not just a story about pride. It is a story about respect, about learning, and about the true meaning of strength. It was a burning hot day in Burkina Faso. The city was alive. Markets were busy, music was loud, and people were everywhere. Suddenly, big American army trucks rolled into the city. Soldiers jumped out, boots shining, faces serious. The people stared. Some waved, some just watched. The Americans were here to train with the local army. They wanted to show their skills. But one soldier, Sergeant John Miller, stood out. He was tall, strong, and full of pride. He thought the American army was the best. He thought no one could beat them. He looked at everything with a smirk. The next day, the Americans were invited to meet President Ibrahim Traoré. The hall was simple but full of beautiful African art. President Traoré stood at the front, calm and smiling. "Welcome to Burkina Faso," he said. "We hope you learn from us and we learn from you." John looked around and whispered, "This is their palace." "It's nothing." His friend laughed. But President Traoré heard him. He didn't get angry. He just smiled and said, "Sergeant Miller, you look strong. What makes your army so powerful?" John stood up, proud. "Mr. President, the American army is the strongest. We have the best weapons, the best training, the best soldiers. No one can beat us." The room went silent. Some local soldiers looked angry. President Traoré just smiled. "Is that so? Here we believe true strength is not just about weapons. It's about heart, spirit, and the will to protect your people." John laughed. "With all respect, Mr. President, I think you don't understand real power." President Traoré's eyes sparkled. "Maybe, but would you like to prove it?" John was surprised. "What do you mean?" President Traoré said, "Let's have a friendly competition. You and your men against my soldiers. Not with guns. With courage, wisdom, and unity." John agreed, thinking it would be easy. The first challenge started at sunrise, a race across the savannah. The Americans stretched, ready to win. The Africans smiled, ready too. The whistle blew. The Americans sprinted ahead, dust flying. But the sun got hotter. The Americans slowed down, sweating hard. The African soldiers kept running, light on their feet. They reached the baobab tree, touched it, and ran back. The Africans finished first. The crowd cheered. John was shocked. He had never seen such strength. No time to rest. The next challenge was a riddle under a big tree. The elders gave the riddle. The Americans argued, trying to solve it. The Africans listened, remembered old stories, and answered quickly. They got it right. John was amazed. He saw that strength was not just about muscles. The next day, President Traoré took the Americans to a remote village. The drive was long and bumpy. The road was dusty. Along the way, John saw people working in the fields, children waving and women carrying baskets on their heads. When they arrived, the whole village came out to greet them. There was drumming, singing, and dancing. The Americans watched, surprised by the energy and joy. In the village, President Traoré announced a new challenge. This time it was a test of skill. Each team had to build a shelter using only what they could find in the village. The Americans started quickly using their training. They tried to make a strong shelter, but they did not know the local materials. The Africans worked together, using palm leaves, sticks, and mud. They laughed and shared ideas. Their shelter was finished first and stood strong, even when the wind blew hard. The Americans' shelter fell apart. John was embarrassed, but he learned something new. After the challenge, the villagers invited everyone to eat. The food was simple but delicious. There was rice, beans, spicy sauce, and grilled meat. John tried everything. He coughed when the food was too spicy and everyone laughed. He realized that sharing food was a way to show respect and friendship. That night, the villagers told stories around the fire. An old woman spoke about the time when the river dried up and the village almost starved. She said, "We survived because we worked together. We shared what we had. We never gave up." John listened closely. He saw that the people were strong because they cared for each other. The next morning, President Traoré took the Americans to a school. The children were excited to see the soldiers. They sang songs and showed their drawings. John asked the children about their dreams. One boy said, "I want to be a doctor." A girl said, "I want to be a teacher." John was touched. He saw that the children had big dreams, even if they had little. After the school visit, there was another challenge. This time it was a test of problem solving. Each team was given a broken water pump. The Americans tried to fix it with their tools, but nothing worked. The Africans used simple tricks they learned from their parents. They used a piece of cloth, a stick, and some water. Soon the pump was working again. The villagers cheered. John was amazed by their cleverness. Later, President Traoré took John to meet a group of women who made baskets. The women worked together, talking and laughing. John asked, "How do you make the baskets so strong?" One woman said, "We weave them together. Alone, the grass is weak. Together, it is strong." John remembered the old man's words. He saw the lesson again. The Americans stayed in the village for several days. Each day brought a new challenge. One day they had to find water in the dry land. The Americans looked everywhere but found nothing. The Africans watched the birds and the ants. They followed them to a hidden spring. They filled their pots with clean water. John was surprised. He learned that nature could teach many lessons. Another day, there was a music contest. The Americans played their instruments. The Africans played drums, flutes, and sang. The music was loud and full of life. Everyone danced together. John felt happy. He saw that music could bring people together, even if they spoke different languages. One evening there was a storm. The wind was strong and the rain fell hard. The Americans were scared. Their tents shook. The villagers invited them into their homes. They shared blankets and told stories to pass the time. John saw that kindness was everywhere. The next morning, President Traoré called everyone together. He said, "You have seen our challenges. You have seen our strength. What have you learned?" John stood up. He said, "I have learned that true strength is not about being the biggest or the strongest. It is about working together. It is about caring for others. It is about never giving up." President Traoré smiled. "You have learned well. Remember this lesson. Share it with others." But the journey was not over. President Traoré wanted the Americans to see more. He took them to the north, where the land was dry and the people faced many hardships. There, the Americans saw how the villagers survived with little water. They watched as women walked for miles to fetch water from a well. The Americans tried to carry the heavy water pots on their heads, but they struggled. The villagers laughed kindly and showed them how to balance the pots. John realized how strong these women were, carrying water every day for their families. In the north, there was another challenge. The teams had to cook a meal using only what they could find in the wild. The Americans searched for food but found little. The Africans knew which plants were safe to eat and how to catch fish in the river. They made a tasty meal with wild herbs, fish, and roots. The Americans tasted the food and were surprised by how good it was. John learned that knowledge of the land was a kind of strength too. After the meal, the villagers invited everyone to a wrestling match. Wrestling is a popular sport in Burkina Faso. The Americans watched as the local champions stepped into the ring. The matches were fast and exciting. The Americans tried wrestling too, but the local wrestlers were quick and clever. They used skill, not just strength, to win. John respected their talent. The next day, President Traoré took the Americans to a market. The market was full of colors, sounds, and smells. People sold fruits, vegetables, clothes, and crafts. John saw how everyone worked hard from sunrise to sunset. He saw children helping their parents, old men selling handmade tools, and women bargaining for the best price. The market was busy, but everyone was friendly. John bought a small wooden carving as a memory of his time in Burkina Faso. In the afternoon, there was a new challenge. The teams had to help build a fence to protect the village's crops from wild animals. The Americans worked hard, but they were not used to the tools. The Africans showed them how to use simple sticks and rope to make a strong fence. They finished the job together, and the villagers thanked them. John felt proud to help. That evening, the village held a festival. There was drumming, singing, and dancing. The Americans joined in, learning the local dances. John laughed as he tried to follow the fast steps. The villagers cheered for him. He felt like part of the community. The next morning, President Traoré took the Americans to a hospital. The hospital was small and had few supplies. The doctors and nurses worked hard to help everyone. John saw how the staff cared for the sick, even when they were tired. He saw mothers holding their babies, hoping for help. The Americans gave some of their medical supplies to the hospital. The doctors were grateful. John realized that helping others was more important than showing off strength. After the hospital visit, there was a final challenge. The teams had to organize a football match for the village children. The Americans and Africans worked together to set up the field, make goals from sticks, and gather the children. The match was full of energy. The children ran fast, laughed, and cheered. John played as a goalkeeper. He tried his best, but the children scored many goals. Everyone had fun. At the end, the children thanked the soldiers for the best day ever. As the sun set, President Traoré gathered everyone. He said, "You have seen our land, our people, and our challenges. You have learned our ways. What will you remember?" John stood up. He said, "I will remember the strength of your people. I will remember the lessons of unity, respect, and kindness. I will never forget what I learned here." President Traoré smiled. "You came here with pride. You leave with respect. That is true strength." John nodded. He thanked the president for everything. When John returned to America, he told everyone about his journey. He spoke about the race, the riddles, the shelter, the water, the music, the storm, the market, the hospital, and the football match. He spoke about the people of Burkina Faso. He said, "Never judge by what you see. True strength comes from the heart." The story of the American soldier who laughed at President Ibrahim Traoré became a lesson for many. It taught people that respect, unity, and wisdom are more powerful than any weapon. It showed that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. And it reminded everyone that a laugh can start a story, but respect and understanding can change a life forever. So what do you think about the story of the American soldier and President Ibrahim Traoré? Did it surprise you? Did it make you think about respect and true strength in a new way? If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more amazing African tales, don't forget to hit the subscribe button right now. We share stories that inspire, teach, and entertain every week. Leave a comment below and tell us what lesson you learned from this story. And share this video with your friends so they can learn too. Thank you for watching, and remember, real strength comes from the heart. See you in the next story.